Welcome to Comic Book Theater with your hosts, JR and the War Dog.
What's up? Welcome to podcast number 3 with your host, the War Dog, and JR. What's going on, JR?
How's it going, War Dog?
It's all right, dude. It's going good. Today we have 2 awesome guests. Both are badass artists and friends from the Collector's Corner, the greatest group on Facebook. The first up is Brian Silverbacks. What's up, Brian?
What's up, dude? I think my line was, how y'all doing?
We're doing pretty damn good.
Little time delay.
And our other great artist is Jason Hare. What's going on, Jason?
I can't complain. How you doing?
I'm all right, dude. Today's topic is Francesco Mattina. John, why don't you give us some information on what's going on with Francesco Mattina at this moment?
Okay, yeah, War Dog, what we've got going on is Bleeding Cool has hopped on something that actually has been circulated for at least 2 years now that I'm aware of, is that there's some pretty damning evidence that he's tracing some covers. He's basically, they're stopping just short of saying that he's stealing other artists' work. But when you see them side by side, and this was all brought to light from Twitter, but they are actually showing side by sides or even GIFs of one artist's work and then Matina's work over the top and flashing them back and forth. And like you say, they're pretty damning, frankly. There's not another way to go about saying that. But essentially, Mattina is staying silent about it. He's not blocking anybody on Twitter. He's not commenting on it. They're tagging him. And he's just letting it be what it is and not addressing it at all, while the artists that he's copying, they're pretty upset, and with good reason, honestly. So my question for you, War Dog, and for Brian and Jason here, what's the line between copied art and influence art? So you guys understand what I mean there?
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
So Brian, go ahead and I'll throw it to you first here. In your opinion, what's the difference between the two?
Well, let me. I'm not familiar. Is Mattina? Does he paint these, or are these digital? Like, do we know the medium that he's using to create this work?
It's digital.
I agree. I believe that it is digital. And really, a lot of these guys were lesser known artists to begin with, but they're, after them coming forward initially, they're actually getting more work now and becoming better known too.
Good for them.
Yeah. Hey, look, I'm glad that they're getting more work. I'm looking for one of the artists that I know that has become popular. I believe it's Engha. Oh man, I lost his name. In my notes, I lost his name. I apologize,
the
guys.
Asian dude.
The Lee Ji Hyung.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes.
The Korean artist who did the
Phoenix.
The is it the Phoenix, or is it the guy who did the Mary Jane copy?
I think it's the Mary Jane.
He did both. He did both. He did both of those.
Oh yeah.
And so then I don't remember, there was another gentleman. He's the one that really has been at the forefront on Twitter, who brought up his Punisher and Batman, which this is my personal opinion on that one. There are some places that it looks line for line, but then there are other places that you can definitely see where adjustments were made, like in the positioning of the gun that Batman is carrying, as opposed to being pulled tight to the shoulder, it looks more like the gun is tilted slightly forward more and not pressed up in the armpit shoulder area where the Punisher has his. But that also may just be one of those adjustments you make to try and hide that what you're actually trying to do.
Well, for me, like if we're going to talk about the Punisher image, I've got it right here in front of me. I was in the military for several years, and I've been a policeman for several years. There's only certain ways that you can carry a weapon tactically, and that is how you would tactically carry that rifle.
Right.
So I don't really have a problem with using that pose. Like that's how a badass would carry the gun. I don't care if it's Batman or the Punisher.
Well,
right. Go ahead, Jason.
Well, the downside there is that, however, being that is a proper tactical stance, if you take into account the rest of the Punisher, yes, I know that the Batman was that Batman Who Laughs cover 2 that you're talking about, where that Batman is laden with weapons, and boy howdy is he ready to throw down. But if you go down to the legs of both of them, the sidearm is the exact same sidearm scaled and then put right back to the exact same place. Even the bands on it are identical.
That. Yeah, that's true. But I mean, oh crap! Some stuff you can't defend. I don't know, but if I just look at the whole thing, I'm okay with it. But if I look at that sidearm, it is a shrunk down version of the same thing.
Yeah, I noticed
that's where you get at, where you kind of get stuck on a digital artist being able to basically sample an overlay when you are a gifted Photoshop artist. That is also still skill, but at the same time,
but is that against the rule? Well, I guess straight copy and paste is pretty bad. Yeah.
So that's basically what he's doing. Like he's got a whole bunch of stuff, because I've seen people sit there in the defense of Mattina show us all of the work he's been doing over
and he's phenomenal
years. And you know what, there's some amazing stuff, but whenever you actually pay closer attention, now that it's becoming under the microscope, you notice that so this is painfully photoshopped. Here's the unbearable proof that is been thrown to the light. Yay,
maybe he's just the idiot cover artist.
But then when you see the things that, because you say that, and that makes sense, because when you do something over and over, it becomes a muscle memory, and it's easy to repeat the process. You do a title or you do a series of covers for one thing, then you get used to doing that. But then, when he does the occasional Flash cover or Deathstroke or something, and you go, "Wow, that doesn't look anything like your normal art," and you go, So it's kind of hard to come to his defense at all when things that are painfully obvious original pieces look nothing like what he's famous for.
Right. So I think we've actually answered one of my other questions that I was going to pose to you guys. I mean, I think we're probably all in agreement here that there are definitely times that he's copied art. I don't think that that's really even something that even his most staunch supporters are having to give that point. I'm looking through some of the comments over at the Collector's Corner on because this got posted a couple of different times over there, because it is such big news because he has been so popular. But even them, they're not really defending the copying of the art. But what they are doing is they're saying that they're still going. Some people are saying that they are still going to collect his art and that they're going to continue to be fans. So my question to you guys too is, does him copying other artists' art, does that take away from the pieces that we know are original? Like you were talking about the Flash. I also, he's done some work on Spawn as well. Does that take away, in your guys' estimation, from that? Or is that something where you can separate those two? Jason, I'll throw that to you first.
Honestly, it feels like it's easier to distinguish between them. Um, eh, More power to the collector, because if it's a beautiful piece, then have at it, man. If it puts a smile on your face and you love it, collect it. But me personally, I wasn't on the giant Mattina bandwagon, out the gate like everyone else was, because I was still in my Hughes phase. But for me, it takes away from any accomplishment he could have done on original work, and at the same time, it diminishes the work of the original artists. So
I would tend to agree with that from a fan standpoint. Really, essentially, the way that I look at it is it makes it harder for me as a fan to enjoy his original work, and I feel like it puts me in a bad spot as a fan to enjoy it, and it really almost makes me resent him for doing that. And really, it's one of those things where I look at it and I say, it's aesthetically pleasing. It pleases the eye. And so I have that emotional response. But on the other hand, in the back of my mind, every time I look at that, I say to myself, I wonder if it's going to come to light later down the line that somebody else was actually the original artist on that. Brian, what did you want to add?
My thought is every form of entertainment has some sort of sampling or homage. When you watch movies, they're going to do certain scenes that are, almost a one-for-one recreation from another movie, just using the characters from this movie. And it, at the beginning of the movie, they don't say some scenes in this movie may appear from, what other movie. And every time you buy a song, you're not going to, you hear a little drum beat. You're like, oh, that's that song from back in the 80s or whatever. Like, it happens all over the place. So I can't be mad, because when you look at the image, is the image good looking? Hell yeah, it looks good. That is an awesome piece of art. How he got there, if I don't want to know how the sausage is made, I just want to eat the sausage because I like eating sausage.
I understand that sentiment completely, and we'll gloss over the double entente there. It'll be fine. War Dog, did you have anything to add to this, as far as, because I'm curious how you feel about it as well.
I'm a total fanboy of Mattina, and this is a little bit disappointing. I actually said that he was one of my artists of the year, probably 2 podcasts ago. So seeing all of this is almost a little bit heartbreaking. I do think that he is a master of the technology that he's using, and we're going to probably see more of this as time goes on. One question that I have for the artist guys is, with like Photoshop, can you paste like the Punisher and then remove layers so that you have like, you get it down to like a base layer and then add your own artistic layers on top of it and kind of create your own image, but based off of an original like sculpt? Does that make sense?
Yes. Yeah. Even in the program that I use for the work that we do, I use Procreate on my iPad, and it allows me to use layers and manipulate my images based off of that. So I can do a layout, like I've shown, you, War Dog, in the past, or I'll do a rough thing, and then I'll come in and put a layer on top of that, and I'll use that rough layout as my basis for what going forward. I think I've seen Brian in some of his tutorial stuff. He's done the same thing, how you're able to use it in multiple art programs, Photoshop as well. And so, yeah, you can start with a base frame. So at the same time, you can take another image, import it into your program, and then strip it down to just a basic outline. You can remove everything, erase, cut, bring it down to its basic form, and then use that as your framework going forward.
Yeah, there's nothing you can't do in the programs with Photoshop, and I use Clip Studio Paint as well. But there are people on Instagram that I follow that their whole thing is how to Photoshop people. They'll take actor X and put him in a Henry Cavill super suit, change the logo into Mr. Incredible, and they make these fantastic looking pieces of fan art that also incorporate fan casting. And that's all done with Photoshop. And that to me is the bridge between what you're seeing with the Mattina stuff and people that create just from out of their head. Like you could do anything in Photoshop, and this is just an example of. But those people, they don't claim to be creating it. Like obviously that's The Rock's face, you know what I mean? But it's still fun to look at.
That too, but at the same time, going back to where we were talking about the difference between influencing and copying. Now, as artists, we know that if we are straight up using what someone else has done, we are doing an homage. And with any homage, like came across, what was it, the later part of last year, somebody was doing a drawing of something else, and it was an homage, but they didn't put an after whomever the original artist was on their thing, and they got into a load of crap for it.
Yeah.
And that's the thing. We know that we give credit where credit's due because we respect the artist that came before us.
It wasn't always the case, though.
I don't care. This is true. But we've grown to that point, and Mattina is coming up in a time where that is the norm and that is the accepted thing. So regardless of whether or not the person he's sampling is nobody, give him credit.
Okay, well, let me ask you this. If he samples the gun from The Punisher and the head from an Alex Jones Superman or Alex Ross Superman, and, if he samples 8 different artists and 8 different pieces of the body and kind of glues them together to come up with his own image, does he need to say after each one of those artists? Or is that, you shouldn't do that at all? Like, I'm just curious.
Personally, I wouldn't do that. That's Frankenstein and some stuff there.
It sounds to me like that would be something that would be so far beyond the pale and that it's so unoriginal at that point. It would almost be more like a collage than actual art. I mean, that's that's me more as a fan. And I know that, like you guys were talking about before, even to sample all of these and make them look as one cohesive piece of art is a talent, but I'm not sure I, as a fan, would not be able to pick some of that out, and I'm not sure it still would be aesthetically pleasing.
Yeah, I agree. If you're, go ahead. My bad.
Oh, I'm sorry. No, go ahead. I was coming in at the same time.
No, go ahead. I'll rethink my thoughts.
Well, what I was thinking was, okay, going back to War Dog's earlier comment about being able to strip it out an image, and how using these digital programs for us to put together our comic images and whatnot. Okay, so say I went in and I found 6 pieces of art that really helped me, and I referenced it for what I wanted to do, but I couldn't just quite get it right. So what do? You do the collage piece. Yeah, okay, I'm cutting this head out here, I'm placing it over here, I'm putting this torso like this because this is the angle I want to look at, or something. And then you put another layer on top of that, and then you do your rough outline from that collage piece. Now going forward from that, you're doing it based off of a completely new piece of art.
Okay, because that's what I do. I've done that when I have an idea in my head of a certain look or a certain head tilt or whatever, and I will Google images until I find all the pieces. I'll make my Frankenstein in Photoshop and then use that as now that's my reference piece. I'm not copying, pasting, or I'm not painting over and changing the look. I'm just using that as now, all right, this is one person and that's my reference piece. And so sometimes there's not the exact image of what I need to see how the muscles would fall and stuff like that.
Yeah, the only thing that has stopped me from having to rely on that was I was very fortunate that my mother-in-law got me those
dolls.
Yeah, the dolls that you can pose. That they're from SH Figure Arts. They are they're like mannequin male and mannequin female, and they come with 16 hands, every pose you can imagine.
Ninja swords and stuff too. Is that the ones?
Ninja swords, cell phones, laptops, anything to interact with.
Those are pretty badass.
They are. I highly recommend them. And now that the knockoffs have hit the market, they're dirt cheap. So
you know what?
Run out and get you a pair.
You know what else I've seen? I've seen people use like just straight up take their action figures and kind of like, and then just use their camera phone to get the right angle, and then just use their just straight up, not very articulatable, whatever, bendable, not very bendable figures, and come up with like, here's what an over the shoulder would look like. You got your Hulk figure and you want him to look down at Wolverine, so you throw your camera over his shoulder and you can kind of get all your foreshortening and all that stuff taken care of. I think it's pretty cool.
Yeah, no, it's using action figures is, especially now that we are at the scale we are with the amount of articulation on a figure, to sit there and just pose them exactly how you want them. They even sell little, $2 stands at the Hobby Lobby where you can, hold them up perfect. And like I've done with these figures, they come with little clear plastic stands that'll hold them in the air.
Yeah.
And I've had the one where like the person's standing there on the ground, rearing back to punch, and then the other guy's leaping through the air with the sword overhead. And I'm like, now I grab the iPad and just kind of swivel around, take a snapshot, put, import. All right, that's exactly what I needed. Now I know how it looks. Because that is the reason why we reference things in the first place, is because we're needing to have that image we're trying to build in our head come together.
Well, and I'm actually,
but that's segueing away from what Mattina's doing, where he's really just photoshopping over the original art. I mean,
right, and
so I think there is a fine line there that we all are, close to crossing on many occasions.
When, speaking as a fan, I'm all for artists using every bit of technology and everything that you need to get what the idea from your head accurately portrayed onto the paper or whatever medium it is that you're using at the time. I'm all for that. Whether it be you go back to and see some of the old Marvel artists posing themselves in the office to see, hey, okay, this is how this would look, or like you're talking about the posable figurines or what have you, to get an idea of how things would look, how they should look. I'm a much bigger fan of something like that than I am somebody who pulls it out of their mind, doesn't really take into account the anatomy or the physiology of a human being. And look, to me also, there's a bit of a difference between being a very stylized artist and somebody who's trying to be more realistic. And I think we all appreciate that as well, whether, like I say, whether they're being stylized or not, I'm kind of indifferent towards. But if they're really going for realism, then I really want them to go that extra mile to give it, like you were saying, having them posed where they're in the air with the ninja swords over their head, getting a couple of different shots with your iPad or whatever, and then saying, okay, that's what I saw in my mind. This is how it's going to work best. One real quick last question that I've got for everybody as well, and this is one of those where just if Mattina finally decided that he wanted to attempt to undo, and I think it varies to what degree the harm has been done to his reputation. If he was to try to undo the harm to his reputation, where would you guys advise that he start? Jason, I'll throw that one to you first. What would he have to do in order for him to be forgiven by other artists, or is that even a possibility?
by the artist community or by the artists he has plagiarized?
I either way, I would actually. I'm interested in both answers, really, because I mean, I'm sure that there's been guys that have got really close to the work that you've done, or maybe you've showed them something in a group project, and next thing you know, they've taken it and used it in a personal project. So really, actually, both. If he had wronged you personally, how could he say he's sorry and actually get you to forgive him?
Credit and money. No,
Hey, that's
uh,
legit.
no, it's that's the human answer. That is, I think, the simplest that is the simplest way to a man's heart is to his belly, and a piece of the pie helps. But no, if something like that happened to me, and yeah, okay, so I put myself in the shoes of one of the artists that Mattina has used in his art. So, I won't be so negative as to say just blatantly ripped off, but I think that it would be hard to forgive, especially when there was no attempt at communication prior. So yeah, giving me the credit after the fact, make a public statement, because now we have the social media to get to everybody at once. So you can really, get the word out there. But see, for me, in the world we live in now, as quickly as information is disseminated, apologies are given way too often because things like this happen way too often. So it's kind of hard to forgive in the first place. So yeah, pay up.
It sounds like, to me anyway, it sounds like him paying up is actually a form of him showing sincerity. Is that kind of the way you mean that, or
Yeah, pretty much because yeah, like I said, with the way things happen, with how quickly we find out about whatever the latest scandal is, that everybody's always releasing apologies. Like we're supposed to just go, oh, he's sorry, it's okay. No, that's not pain. That is now in the world we live in. That is not even remotely close to sincerity. So yeah, you have to put your money where your mouth is in all aspects of this. And these people put their heart and soul into a piece. They didn't make it anywhere. You obviously, right place, right time. More power to him. Kudos, awesome. I love it for anybody to make it big, and that's awesome. But if you stood on someone else's shoulders to get there, you know what? Go back and give him a hand up.
I 100% agree with that. That's really the way it should work in life in general, not just in art, but in life in general. Brian, what do you think along those lines? Is there anything that he could do that would get him back in your good graces?
Man, I don't know that I'll ever find myself in a position where someone wants to copy my shit. But if that were to happen, I would the best way that I think he could go about it is to say, "Hey, artist X really knocked this out of the park, and it couldn't be done better. And I apologize. I'm sorry. You've already shit the bed. You can't unshit the bed." So I don't know how to do that. But moving forward, I think just in general to the world as a whole, apologize for what you did and simply say, I was trying to take shortcuts, my bad, and then start releasing like tutorials and time lapse videos and start trying to and give free classes or free lessons or some shit online to show that, hey, here's my process. And moving forward, this won't happen anymore. That's probably the best way to recover, but he's never going to fully recover as far as I can see.
Yeah, I would tend to agree with that myself. It really, just kind of like we were talking about a little bit before. I look at it from a collector and fan standpoint, and one of the places that I was doing some research for this subject was over at CBSI, which is comic book speculation invest.com. they put out a top 10 list of the hottest books of the week, spec books, this kind of thing. And it's not always brand new stuff. Sometimes it's older stuff. It's a wide variety. But anyway, number 6 in their top 10 is Project Superpower number 5. It's the 1 in 10 Francesco Mattina Virgin variant. And you look at it, and it's awesome. But on the flip side, you also look at it and you say to yourself, kind of like I said before, are we going to see that this is an awesome cover, but it's actually somebody else's work that he just kind of doctored up? Or is it his own work and it's actually awesome? And so, kind of in that way where you guys were talking about, he's got to tell the truth, whether it's a statement that says, like Brian was saying, come clean, say, hey, I tried to take some shortcuts here. I'm doing a bajillion covers a year and I just could not keep up. So I saw something I liked. This guy knocked it out of the park. I adjusted a few things and sent it out, and truthfully, heartfelt say, I'm sorry. And like you say, give back to the community. I think that would be a good way. But also, part of that too is not treating the fans as if they're too stupid to figure this out. Especially with, like we were talking about before, Jason saying we're in the age of social media. You can send out an I'm sorry, and it doesn't really mean a whole lot. But in that same way, I see artists like you guys participating in a group like the Collector's Corner, sharing your work and showing people your work. But also, whenever a fledgling artist shows up and says, this is the first time I've picked up a pencil in 10 years. I used to really enjoy doing it in high school. Anybody got some pointers? And I know that it's a very tight knit for like 17 or 18,000 people in that group. It's an extremely tight knit community of collectors and artists, and it feels like we're all always willing to help each other out that way. Getting in and doing something like that, I think, could go a ways in helping him repair his the way people look. Yeah, his reputation. Thank you. War Dog, how do you feel about it, man?
I am a comic book fan, and Mattina is like killing it with all of his stuff. So I want comic books to continue to be popular. I want this print media to continue to be popular. If Mattina's doing things that are selling comic books, is that not a good thing for all of us comic book collectors?
The downside with that is that, like I was saying, with the social media instant dissemination of information, there's no surprises anymore. I mean, when's the last time you were pleasantly surprised when you went to go see a movie? You didn't already have 10 things spoiled for you before you went in there. Find these things right here. Is like, as soon as people put these things together, and like JR had said, at the beginning, it's been a couple of years people have been noting these things. It's just that it brews, it gets blown out of proportion. If we did not live in the time that we live in now, it would be forever before we ever actually noticed it. We're only just now realizing that John Byrne reused half of his library of work for both DC and Marvel. So I mean, we would still be going, Mattina's awesome, because it would still be a smaller world, or it would still be a bigger world. We wouldn't know about all these other things. We would still be looking at our issue of Batman going, wow, this was awesome. Right now, we'd probably be having a conversation about how awesome Mattina is if it wasn't for how quickly we find out about stuff.
Do you guys think that this is also partially some of the backlash that we have seen with the last couple of years, with guys like Bill Finger getting hosed by Bob Kane and that kind of thing? Do you think that kind of stems off of some of that as well? Or do you think that that's just a completely, totally separate thing that really doesn't have any bearing on this?
It's the same thing, because there's no such thing as a secret. There's no such thing as a surprise anymore. So anytime anything's found out, and then it becomes a big deal because there's such a huge platform, being the internet, to deliver the information instantaneously worldwide, it gets a lot bigger than it probably should be. But I think it's just that it's the age we live in. You can't have something. You can't have a secret like this, have it come out, and then expect it not to be a big deal.
I agree. Brian, how do you feel about it?
I think it all boils down to the checkbook, man. Like I just, the whole Bill Finger thing, like, we're more cognizant of everything that goes into the creation of comic book characters, and everybody wants to say, hey, I helped create that character, where, that wasn't a real big deal, but and now people are trying to get their piece of the pie. And if I see that Matina's getting paid, $1,000 per cover, and half the art that he's using is created by somebody else, then if I'm one of those somebody else's, I'm feeling kind of slighted. So I'm having trouble understanding if it's them upset that the art was stolen, or that they're not being credited, or that they're not being paid. I don't know where the true.
I think it's all three.
Yeah.
You know what?
Like, just be original. Be original and avoid all that.
And me as a fan, I really don't mind it being all three. War Dog will attest to this because we've been in communication for months before we started the podcast here. But I'm a free market guy. Profit is not a bad word. If you guys
it's not.
if you guys aren't making money, yeah, you can do it for the love of it, but then you have to do something else to support your family. And if you could do this and support your family, that's a win-win. You go home happy, you produce better art. I mean, I think all having it be all three is perfect in my mind, of saying, yes, be credited, get the credit for what you deserve. Don't have somebody else steal what to me is basically your intellectual property. It, yes, may be a pre-established character, but if you are the one that created the original artwork, it then is your intellectual property to a certain extent, at least in my opinion, at that point, and then getting paid for it. I mean, to me, it just makes sense.
What's really sad about all of this is that comic book collectors really do not care if you copy things, as long as you give credit. Like, look at Spider-Man, Amazing Spider-Man 300. Nobody cares that people redo that cover, as long as you give credit. Of course, you probably don't even have to give credit to that one anymore. But the one thing that, and this is probably like from the artist community, if Mattina copies somebody else's art, comic book collectors might want to go out and buy that other person's artwork, just so that they have Matina's and that other person's artworks to go side by side. And so you're really like supporting the whole art community by referencing, whoever you're using. And someday Mattina might learn from that himself, that, when he's older and nobody cares about what he's doing, somebody might use one of his images. Like I said, he did an awesome Killer Croc on this Suicide Squad that's coming out. Maybe somebody else uses that exact same picture, and wouldn't he want them to give him credit?
Well, yeah, I think he would definitely want them to give him credit. I think that's for sure. Now, actually, real quick, going back to your Amazing Spider-Man 300 analogy, anybody who's doing any kind of independent book, if you want to move units, you do an ASM 300 swipe. You're going to move units because the people who love that book are nutty enough. It doesn't matter. They don't have to know anything about your character at all. They want that swipe in their collection. So I see what you're saying there with that one, but that's just a tip for anybody who's doing the indie book scene and trying to move units. Brian, how do you feel about what War Dog was saying?
My only thought is I just wanted to like, the internet is such a double-edged sword. Would how many collectors out there would even have all the books? Like, let's say I bought all the Mattina stuff. I'm really a big fan of Mattina. But would I also have that Punisher cover? Would I also have the other cover with the Dark Phoenix and all the other stuff? With the fact that the internet exists, as soon as someone finds that out, it brings it to your attention. Whereas you're a collector, you don't like Dark Phoenix, you'll never know that was a stolen art or whatever. So, but if you don't have the internet, then you're not moving as many units and you're not getting the popularity. Dude, the internet is tough, man.
I agree 100%. The internet, like you just said, is absolutely a double-edged sword. You can have very constructive communities in the internet. You can also have, for lack of a better term, witch hunts that happen through the internet as well. And don't misunderstand me. I'm not saying this is a witch hunt. I think that he's made his bed. He's got a lie in it at this point. So I'm not feeling sorry for him at all in that. But you're absolutely right. The internet is a tool, and there are a lot of tools that people use improperly. And so in that same way, yeah, I heard that. Anyway, and it's one of those deals where you can, we all consciously make a choice, or whether it's conscious or not, rather, we all make a choice how we use that tool. If we're using it in a group like the Collector's Corner or doing this podcast, and this podcast is generally not just to set and rag on one artist the whole time, but hey, if a guy deserves it, he's gonna get it, and it's a matter of principle at that point. But then
I don't know that we're ragging on him.
Well, I didn't really mean it as far as what we're doing. We're not insulting him. We're just bringing to light facts.
We're just discussing an issue.
Right. And anybody who's listening to this that is a Mattina fan, chances are really high we're not going to change their opinions of the man at all, really. But on the flip side,
he's got talent, man. That dude's talented.
Absolutely. But I do think
it's still an art skill,
right?
It comes down to that. I mean, what he has done is still artistic. It's the same thing as looking at someone who does a completely. Look at Pixar. Pixar movies, they are drawn on computers, beginning to end, animated. It's the difference between that and a Japanese animation. It's still freaking beautiful.
Right, and I don't think that any of us are discounting his talent, but I think, or at least for me personally, it leaves a bad taste in my mouth. Is really the best way I can think of to describe it.
But so did Episode 9.
Well,
Episode 9 of Star Wars left a bad taste in everybody's mouth, but there's still Star Wars fans.
Oh, I get
really, that. I was thinking Phantom Menace left a bad taste in my mouth.
Okay, the prequels.
Okay. So you guys are giving me a great segue. War Dog's going to kill me for doing it, but that's okay. I just need you guys to Google Darth Jar Jar and watch an 8-minute YouTube video about how that Jar Jar Binks was supposed to have been the big bad in the prequels, and George Lucas chickened out. And there's some pretty compelling evidence to that. That's my own little personal soapbox there. But if you watch that, it will change your mind about the prequels. I promise.
Almost as bad as, have you seen the stuff that talks about how Snowpiercer is a sequel to Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory?
Yes. There's so many good ones like that. Or Malcolm in the Middle is what happened to Walter White after Breaking Bad, They put him in witness protection.
Yep.
Yeah, there's all sorts of great ones out there like that, and there's just enough thread in there that could be possible.
I believe in Jar Jar,
that if you
though.
really want to believe,
That
you
drunken
can believe.
fighting style.
Jar Jar Jar.
See, I told you, War Dog, it's legit, man. There's no question in my mind after watching that. And I'm telling you guys, Jason, Brian, you go watch that. You hit me up in Facebook Instant Messenger after you
I've seen it.
Oh, you've seen it?
Oh yeah.
It
makes a good case.
It does. And also, War Dog will attest to this in the last podcast that we did. My opinion on it is that if the internet existed when Star Wars started back in the day, we wouldn't have Yoda the way we have Yoda today. Because if you guys remember, you go back in your memory, Yoda started out as kind of a goofball, annoying little guy. You know what I mean? He was not the Jedi Master. At least we didn't know he was a Jedi Master. That was a slow burn there. So the way the internet is these days, you're not allowed to have a slow burn on anything. Like you said, there's no surprises anymore. Nothing. Everybody knew it.
No, that shit would have been spoiled,
Absolutely.
man. It would have been ruined.
Either that, or somebody would have got on a message board and been like, "What's with Yoda being voiced from the guy from Sesame Street? That's so lame." Blah blah blah. And next thing you know, Yoda ends up written into the background of the story, and they bring up Mace Windu or somebody like that to kind of fill in, and that's how you ended up with Count Dooku. So anyway,
Hey, back to the
Darth off my soapbox now.
Back to the Darth Jar Jar. Darth Jar Jar. If you guys watched Daredevil, there was the drunken fighting guy that he fought. I think how many seasons is Daredevil on?
That was the Defenders you're talking about, I think.
Oh yeah. You're probably right on that.
Wasn't that first season of Iron Fist? First season of Iron Fist, third episode in, he in the alley in front of
Fist guy.
Madame Gal's little heroin operation. The one drunken boxer.
Yeah, that was pretty good.
You get extra.
You even remember the episode?
Yeah, that was pretty bad. Yeah, I may have screwed that up, but still. Yeah, no, I do remember that when they're walking. It's Madame Gal's operation, and it is Iron Fist, and I can't remember who was with him.
Oh, it was
what's her face?
Night Nurse.
No, was it the Night Nurse was there too, but I think she stayed at the car. Who's the one with the katana?
White Tiger.
What's her face?
White Tiger.
Yeah.
Or the Asian girl.
Colleen Wing.
Yes.
Colleen Wing was there, yeah. But yeah, because they were basically cycling us through all the different deadly weapon characters. So yeah, you had the drunken boxer, you had
I'm stuck on Colleen
Poison
Wing.
Sisters.
She was amazing.
Big strong dude. But
yeah, she was one of the best. So you guys excited for the Punisher season? Is it season 2 coming out?
Yeah, on the 18th.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely.
My unemployed ass will be watching it in a day.
Well,
I'm totally looking forward to it.
I'm working overtime, and I promise I won't be far behind you. I think they knocked it out of the park. It's going to be kind of sad to see that go away whenever the Disney streaming service shows up, and those guys because their contracts were all with Netflix, that they're not going to be able to use those guys for, I think it's 2 years, something like that.
You just broke my heart.
That's going to be a sad day.
Thanks, John. Yeah, I didn't know that.
Did you not know that, War Dog? I'm so sorry, man. That's like, okay.
What was that now? They have a 2-year grace period after the last thing wraps up.
After they cancel. So Daredevil and all those that have already been canceled, they're on the clock, but by the time that's all said and done, now there again too, you guys know as well as I do, if Disney really wants it to happen, they'll find a way contractually to buy out that option and start them
Spider-Man.
up. Yeah, they'll figure it out, man. I'm not super duper worried. I'm just giving you like worst case scenario. I think that it still could happen, but yeah, it may have to wait a year or two.
Well, that explains why we haven't heard anything more about the Disney app launch platform, because it's all still in development, whatever. I mean, it would make more sense that that's their story to go with versus, no, actually, see, our starting lineup, we've already got it filmed, but we can't show anything for 2 years.
Well, and honestly, my understanding too is that Disney owns controlling interest in Hulu. So this is what boggles my mind. Why didn't all of this go through Hulu in the beginning anyway? It doesn't. That's part. And there again, who knows? I don't know why they didn't go through Hulu, but like you say, I think it's like 52% of Hulu is owned by Disney. So,
Well, Netflix is the original, and Hulu is the Mattina.
that is a perfect way to bring that full circle. Bring us back in off of that tangent.
Well, with
Very
that,
nice.
I think we should wrap this up. We're at 52 minutes.
I miss
This was an awesome conversation. Does anybody have any final thoughts on our conversation today?
Yes. Always reference your sources.
Yeah, and stay creative.
Yeah, try to keep it real. But if you gotta borrow something, reference that shit.
I think that sums it up pretty well right there. Is if you've got to reference somebody else's work, give them credit and be upfront and honest from the very get go.
Yeah, better safe than sorry.
And then there's no controversy at all.
Yeah, sir. And then people can still respect your work instead of having people doing the whole Mattina, I'm going to drop all his books. I'm never going to get another thing. It's like,
yeah, bullshit. I'm going to just hide him underneath my bed.
You're going to be like drooling all over that.
Shut up. You weren't supposed to tell anybody about that. All right, guys. Well, we'll wrap this up. I'm going to stop the recording. This was great. Thank you guys for joining us.
Brian and Jason, thank you so much for joining us today. We really appreciate it.
Thank you for having me.
Thanks for having us. Heck yeah.